What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another video. I am so excited to be bringing you guys this video today as we are 2 weeks away, 14 days from the NFL draft. It's coming up fast, and this year is one of the craziest years I think we're going to have within the first round of the actual NFL draft because there are so many receivers and quarterbacks who have potential to come off the board in day one. So today, I don't want to focus on fantasy football as this channel usually does. I want to direct it more towards just where I think a lot of these prospects are going to go in the first round. So I'm mostly going to focus on the skill weapons, quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, and really not going to focus too deep, dive too deep or really focus on the teams that I think are going to take, corners and offensive linemen, defensive linemen. We'll touch on it quickly, but mostly, this is for skill weapons. It's my specialty, it's my forte, so we're going to really stick with skill weapons today. But without further ado, no more rambling, let's get right into it. All right, so with the first overall pick, it is the Chicago Bears, and I think this one's obvious. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. It's Caleb Williams, quarterback out of USC. I mean, I've done scouting reports on all the quarterbacks, so if you want to watch any of that, there'll be a playlist below, any of the scouting reports, but he is the number one quarterback in this draft. I have fallen in love with Jaden Daniels, who we'll talk about next, but I think Caleb Williams is the number one guy. His ability to just read from within a pocket, not always look to run, his accuracy, his playmaking skills, all of the above to me just creates a great quarterback. And he's in a great situation there in Chicago. I've heard rumors that maybe they trade down, maybe they just start off with Marvin Harrison Jr. There's no way. After bringing in Keenan Allen, having DJ Moore, bringing in DeAndre Swift, having Cole Kmet, all of the above, great weapons, they're going to bring in Caleb Williams from USC and just start off their, hopefully, transition into being an actual competent team in the next, hopefully, decade. Next, we move on to the Washington Commanders, who have the second overall pick, and I think this one's pretty easy for me. I think it's Jaden Daniels, quarterback out of LSU. When I looked at Jaden Daniels when I was doing all the film, I told myself I just already don't buy Jaden Daniels. I looked at the stats, I saw what he did at Arizona State, even last year at LSU, had a good season, or rather 2 years ago at LSU, a solid season, but nothing really to write home about. And then this year he blew up and was the Heisman winner and was just honestly a superstar. I fell in love with him. I think he has really all the traits to be a great day one starter in the NFL. There's tiers, in your quarterback evaluations. I think Caleb Williams is probably in a tier by himself. You can maybe tack on Jaden Daniels at the end of that tier, but for me, it really goes Caleb Williams is in tier one. I'd say probably honestly 1B is Jaden Daniels by himself, and then you get into Drake May, who is probably outside of that tier. So they're really broken up into a couple tiers where I think Jaden Daniels is more in the Caleb Williams camp than he is the Drake May camp. So for me, Jaden Daniels going right to the Washington Commanders, who have great weapons there with, really good running backs. They just brought in Austin Eckler. Brian Robinson Jr. is a really good running back as well, with Terry McLaurin, who's been a 1,000-yard receiver basically his whole career. And then you have Jahan Dotson, who's a good pass-catching weapon there. And then they just got rid of Sam Howell, who was basically their starting quarterback last year. The door is wide open for Jaden Daniels to just step in and be their starter and be their franchise guy. And for me, last thing I'll say about Jaden Daniels is I love him. When a guy's biggest knock is we're worried he is too light, like he's too skinny, not too short. He's just, his frame's too small. We're worried he gets hurt. If that's your biggest knock, then I'm willing to take it. If it's not that he can't read a defense or he's inaccurate, if his biggest flaw is that we're worried he may get hurt after really having a pretty, healthy career in college, I'm good with Jaden Daniels at number 2, going to the Washington Commanders, easy. Number 3 for me is where the draft really starts. I think Chicago and Washington, those picks are pretty much in. I think those are locked in picks. But for me at number 3, New England, I think they're going to take Drake May. I've heard everything here. I've heard the team's so bad, they're going to actually trade back to get more draft capital. I heard that they're going to go after Marvin Harrison Jr. I've heard it all. But for me, I think they're going to take North Carolina quarterback Drake May. Now, I think Drake May might need a year to sit, and what we've learned the last couple years is, is it really worth trotting out your first overall, your top quarterback selection on a team that sucks, a team that really has no structure at the moment? And maybe not. But I think you can't pass up on a quarterback like Drake May. While I think Drake May has his faults and his flaws, I think he's a year away from being great and potentially having a lot of upside. Maybe he needs a year to sit. That's why he brought in Jacoby Brissett. I'm not even sure if Bailey Zappi's still on the roster, but you have other guys you can start in his place. You don't need to start Drake May right away. And I'm a big proponent in, hey, Drake May doesn't need to be your day one starter, but half of the season, 3/4 of the season, start Jacoby Brissett, start whoever else you want, and then at the end of the year, bring Drake May in, see what you got, give him a little playing time, and then let him be the starter next year. The Patriots are probably going to suck this year. Just being honest, they're in a really tough division. They lost Bill Belichick, who's been basically their backbone for the past 20 years. Obviously, they don't have Brady. They haven't had him for a couple years now. The team is in a rebuild mode, right? It's different than what it was. So let Drake May sit for half, 3/4 of the year, but go get your guy. Don't wait until next year where maybe there's no good quarterbacks coming out. Maybe it's slim pickings. You can't wait. If a prospect like this falls into your lap, you have to take him. So I say Drake May, number 3 overall, going to the Patriots. Number 4 for me, we're going very skill position heavy here. Number 4 for me is the Arizona Cardinals, but I have them trading back in Minnesota, jumping to the 4th overall spot and taking J.J. McCarthy. So I have J.J. McCarthy, Michigan quarterback, going to the Minnesota Vikings. I think J.J. McCarthy has potential to be a good quarterback in this league. I don't know if greatness is really in his cards. To me, he doesn't possess a ton of upside, but I think he has a very safe floor. If you want a quarterback who can make quick reads, get the ball out quick, honestly, he could be one of the best day one starters we have at quarterback, but I don't see him ever being more than the 8th to 10th best quarterback in the league, which is great, right? Having a Kirk Cousins type quarterback on your team is valuable. And funny enough, him basically replacing Kirk Cousins here. But that right away on a team that's probably trying to contend with Justin Jefferson, I think it makes a lot of sense. They can't have a season where Sam Darnold's their quarterback or whoever else they bring in free agency. And I don't think there's a ton of other quarterbacks there that in the 2nd or 3rd round that really project to be NFL starters outside of probably Bo Nix, who I think might be a 2nd rounder, might be a 1st rounder. We'll talk about it. And Spencer Rattler. Outside of them, I don't really see a lot of quarterbacks who I project to be, have potential starting caliber, quality starts in their careers. So I think Minnesota jumps up, trades up, takes Arizona's pick and drafts J.J. McCarthy, Michigan quarterback, at number 4 overall. Then at number 5, we get the LA Chargers. And this is another one where I think that they would look to trade down, and I do think they need offensive line help for sure. But I think you have Justin Herbert, and I think you cannot pass on generational talent wide receiver Marvin Harrison Jr. at 5. I just don't think you can do it. If this guy's on your board, it is really hard to pass up for an offensive lineman. I know it's so important, but with the Chargers just losing Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, and actually Everett, their tight end, just left, Gerald Everett. So they're really depleted. And nobody on the roster last year stood out enough for me to be like, yep, I trust them. I trust Quentin Johnston. I trust Josh Palmer, Jalen Guyton. I don't trust any of those guys enough. So I think if Marvin Harrison's on the board, you go after this stud, elite, feels like a foolproof, bust-proof prospect in Marvin Harrison Jr. You take him, easy pick for the Chargers at number 5. Then we move on to number 6, the New York Giants. And I know quarterback has been on their mind, but I think the Giants right now are in a mode where they are really bad. And I think Malik Nabers makes a lot of sense. Give Daniel Jones, after signing that contract, one more year to prove it. He's probably not going to work out as their guy. I just think Malik Nabers makes a lot of sense. They seem to like him. Let Brian Daboll and Daniel Jones manufacture touches for Malik Nabers. This guy is electric with the ball in his hands. You get the ball in his hands and you let him make plays after the catch. I think he's still a little raw as a pure kind of route runner. I kind of like Rome Odunze a little bit more, but I think the Giants know that, hey, we kind of just need someone to get the ball in their hands and have a playmaker on the team, and that's what Malik Nabers can be easily. The guy's one of the fastest and quickest players I've really ever seen, I think. I really think he's going to step in and just be a contributor day one, easily. So Malik Nabers to the New York Giants at number 6 makes a lot of sense to me there. All right, and then we hit my stretch of the Tennessee Titans, Atlanta Falcons, Chicago Bears at 9, and New York Jets at 10, where I have them all taking non-skill position weapons. I have Tennessee taking an offensive tackle, Atlanta probably taking a pass rusher or a corner, the Bears taking an offensive tackle, and the Jets taking an offensive tackle. Now, you can debate whatever you want. You could say, oh, I think Rome Odunze or maybe Brock Bowers should go to the Bears or the Jets. And I get it. I respect it. But at the end of the day, with Chicago's sitting at number 9. They already have 2 really good weapons in Keenan Allen. Honestly, Cole Kmet's not a bad tight end. And DJ Moore. While I love Rome Odunze, he's my number 2 receiver in this class. I love the guy, but I just don't think that's what Chicago needs. You need a good offensive line for your young quarterback. We've seen so many quarterbacks fail behind really bad offensive lines, aka Bryce Young last year. You already have 2 good weapons, maybe 3, and you have good running backs. Bolster up that offensive line and keep him healthy. Let's just keep the guy healthy. And same thing with the Jets. While I wouldn't be mad if they went out and got like Brock Bowers or Rome Odunze, I wouldn't mind it at all. But we got to keep Aaron Rodgers healthy. The guy has maybe 1 or 2 more seasons left before he calls it quits. I know they have Super Bowl aspirations, and this receiver class is really deep. So I think while you have the chance, go get an offensive lineman to help protect Aaron Rodgers. I mean, you have Garrett Wilson. You just made a trade, or you signed Mike Williams to good money. Hopefully he's back for the start of the season. I think that you can get a receiver later in the second round that can supplement and hopefully be a second or third option for Aaron Rodgers. I don't think you need to go out and get a really, really great wide receiver. We need to protect Aaron Rodgers. We saw what happened last year. He didn't get protected, tore his Achilles, and 3 snaps. So I think the Jets take an offensive lineman here at number 10. Number 11, the Arizona Cardinals, originally Minnesota, but they traded back. And this is where I think Rome Odunze goes. I think Arizona is desperately looking for a receiver 1. They don't really have it on the roster. They have Trey McBride, and everyone else I'm just not sold on. I'd like some flashes from Michael Wilson. I thought he was a good player last year when he played, when he was healthy. But outside of that, it's really no one else special. Marquise Brown is gone. They just haven't had anybody since pretty much Hopkins was there. So I think I think Rome Odunze makes a whole bunch of sense going to Arizona. Get Kyler Murray, who they're really set on. They think he's the franchise guy. Whether you agree or disagree, it's up to you. But I think Rome Odunze there makes a lot of sense. Go after the guy who probably doesn't have any, I would say, elite traits, but is really, really good at kind of everything. I think he's just really great at all the above. He's the most well-rounded receiver, probably outside of Marvin Harrison Jr. in this draft class. I love the guy. So if he goes to Arizona, I am all in. I'm sold there. And then number 12, right? We have the Denver Broncos. But I have them trading back. I have them trading with the Buffalo Bills. And that might be crazy. You might think that's kind of a nutty trade. But man, I just think Buffalo has to go and get their guy. They lost Stephon Diggs. They got rid of Gabe Davis. Who are their receivers now? They have the Curtis Samuel and, Shakir. I'm just not sold. I'm not sold. I like the tight end, Dalton Kincaid. Even Dawson Knox is okay. But I'm not sold on their receiver. They need to go out and get someone big. So I think that Buffalo can trade up with their late first and probably a second round pick, because Denver this year doesn't even have a second round pick. I think they could trade up with Denver at 12 and really go after and get their guy at receiver, which I think is going to be Brian Thomas Jr., LSU receiver. They need a big body receiver, someone who can kind of play that X and just be a dominator. And that's what Brian Thomas Jr. showed me at LSU last year. I mean, the guy was great at contested catches. He's like 6'4". He's a big body receiver. While you have underneath guys, you have the middle of the field guy with Dalton Kincaid or Dawson Knox. You have, you kind of your slot weapon with Curtis Samuel, your Swiss Army knife. You have good receivers out of the backfield with James Cook. So I think Brian Thomas Jr. makes a whole lot of sense there. All right, and then next we have the Las Vegas Raiders at 13, and I think they go after a quarterback. I think they go after Michael Penix Jr., Washington quarterback. I like Aiden O'Connell. I did a scouting report on him last year, and he was basically everything I thought he'd be. I don't think he reads a defense great. He's not much of a mover within the pocket, but he's a play-action guy who can get his ball to his number one receiver. He did it with Charlie Jones at Purdue, and he did it pretty well with Devontae Adams. Obviously that was up and down as a rookie, but had a decent showing. But I just don't think that's what the Raiders want to do. I don't think they want to, really put their future into Gardner Minshew, who they signed, or Aiden O'Connell. I mean, I can honestly see them maybe trading off of Aiden O'Connell, moving him somewhere in the draft to another team who needs it, or a backup quarterback, while signing Gardner Minshew. Because I think Aiden O'Connell still has some potential, but I think they want to go after Michael Penix Jr., who I think is just a better version of Aiden O'Connell, truthfully. He doesn't have the biggest arm, but still a strong arm. He can make all the throws. He moves within the pocket really well. Not much outside of the pocket, but has that athleticism. Injury concern is the big thing with Michael Penix. He's been injured a ton in his history in college, but the last 2 years at Washington, he's been really healthy. So I think the Raiders just go after, especially when Antonio Pierce is their new coach, rather. I think they just want to start fresh, get the new quarterback in there, and then start over, and hopefully we get the Raiders having some relevance the next couple years. I think Michael Penix Jr. makes a lot of sense there to the Vegas Raiders. And then we move on, and then we hit another stretch of just teams where I think they're not going to go with any skill weapons. I think we go New Orleans, who probably will take, I would say, an offensive lineman. The Colts, who are going to be looking at a defensive back or safety. The Seattle Seahawks looking at probably an interior offensive lineman, and then the Jacksonville Jags, who are in a really tough division, who really need some help at DB. I think they look to take a DB there. Then we move to 18, and we have the Cincinnati Bengals. And this is one where it could go either way with an offensive lineman, but we're at pick 18, and we haven't talked about someone who's pretty significant, who I think could potentially go higher with a trade up, but I got Brock Bowers going to the Bengals. I know that people really want them to go after another receiver where you go, yeah, man, the Bengals at 18, it makes a lot of sense for them to go after a receiver, but they still do have Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd, and T. Higgins. They're all there. They're still all on the roster. I know T. Higgins wants a trade or whatever, blah, blah, blah. But I think Brock Bowers makes a lot of sense. They haven't had a good tight end ever in Joe Burrow's history there. And he can just be the middle of the field guy that Tyler Boyd is, right? Tyler Boyd is aging. And I don't see them re-signing him to a big deal or anything where I think he could probably get more money going somewhere else as a valuable slot weapon. So I think Brock Bowers can easily just become the kind of middle of the field dominator that they could really use. They could really use them. And if T. Higgins decides to leave, like I said before, we have a lot of day 2, day 3 deep receiver class. I mean, this is a really deep class where I think the Bengals could even just take a receiver somewhere else and hopefully find a replacement for T. Higgins. So I think they either go offensive lineman, Brock Bowers, or if they want to reach for someone who's kind of like a big dominator like T. Higgins was, someone like a Xavier Leggett, a Keon Coleman, I would get it. But right now, Brock Bowers, if he's still on the board at 18, I think he's a smash pick to the Bengals. Then we go to the LA Rams, who I think look to replace Aaron Donald at either an edge rusher or a defensive tackle. We got the Steelers at 20, who are potentially looking for a receiver with Deontay Johnson parting, but I think they go offensive line. Miami just had Bradley Chubb go down and lost Christian Wilkerson, so they have some defensive kind of holes there. So I think they look for an edge rusher. The Eagles, their defensive backs were really miserable last year. I mean, it was a really bad, especially in the second half of the year, a pretty bad defense there from Eagles, which is pretty rare. So I think they look for a defensive back. And then we get to pick 23, which the Arizona Cardinals are picking again because they got the pick from Minnesota. And I had them taking a receiver here. I had them kind of doubling up and taking Keon Coleman, Florida State receiver or wide receiver out of Florida State. Just another one where I think they took Rome Odunze earlier, and I think that Keon Coleman might be a little bit more raw. I think it was just a really athletic freak, a bigger receiver, just an athletic guy. Good receiver, really highly scouted and, a high prospect on everyone's board. But I think this takes a lot of pressure off of you already got Rome Odunze, who I think can just step in and immediately be your number one receiver, or at least, show a lot of flashes of it. I think Keon Coleman might need a little bit of time to develop. So if you let him just develop, cool, right? Like if you let him develop, you already have Michael Wilson there, who's a good receiver, Trey McBride, and hopefully Rome Odunze. So Keon Coleman doesn't have to step in immediately and be the, number 2 receiver. He could be the 2A, 2B, maybe that third receiver. Maybe he takes a little time to develop. But you let him develop. If you let him develop, he could be a star. And then you just have a great duo with Kyler Murray for the next few years. And then quickly, we got pick 24, the Dallas Cowboys. I think they take an offensive lineman. We got the Green Bay Packers looking at probably a defensive back or safety. Tampa Bay desperately needs an offensive lineman, like desperately. We got the Arizona Cardinals back on the board, but I think this time they take a defensive lineman. Their defense was very lackluster last year, and they did not, pressure the opposing quarterback very well. So I think a defensive lineman there would help a ton. And then we get the pick 28 with the Denver Broncos, originally the Buffalo Bills pick. And I still think they get their guy, Bo Nix. Bo Nix has been linked to Denver basically all offseason at 12. And I just don't think Bo Nix is necessarily a first-round talent. Or if you want to say maybe not a first-round talent, he's a late first-round talent. I just don't think Denver needs to take him at 12. And out of all the teams I just basically named, where, like, quickly, the Saints, the Colts, the Seahawks, the Jags, the Bengals, the Rams, the Steelers, the Dolphins, the Eagles, the Cardinals, the Cowboys, the Packers, the Bucks, all those teams are in front of Denver, and none of them really need a quarterback. Maybe Pittsburgh, but after trading for Justin Fields and signing Russ, I don't think they're in the market this year. And Tampa just re-signed Baker Mayfield. So I don't think any of these teams are in the market for a first-round quarterback. So I think Denver can still drop to 28, build some collateral as they have no second-round pick. Well, technically now in the mock draft they do, but in real life they have no second-round picks because of the Russell Wilson trade. They can build some depth. So I think they can still get Bo Nix at number 28, end of the first round, get their guy, and then maybe go get some more talent in the second round. So I think that makes a whole bunch of sense. Denver at 28 taking Oregon quarterback Bo Nix. And then we round out the first round with Detroit Lions taking probably a defensive back, as that was their one biggest weakness last year was DB. We have the Baltimore Ravens probably looking at either, I would say, D-line or O-line, probably preferably O-line there. And then we have San Fran looking at defensive line also. And then we end it with the Super Bowl champs, the Kansas City Chiefs at pick 32. And this one is tough because we have no idea what's happening with Rashee Rice. He's either going to get probably suspended, arrested. He might be fine. We have no idea for reckless driving and having weed in his car, of course. So Kansas City at 32. I think the one thing they've been missing is a field stretcher. They already have Rashee Rice, who is kind of their possession guy, yak guy. They have Travis Kelce, who, while is pretty much on the backswing of his career, they have the middle of the field guy there, their possession guy, their check down guy. I think Xavier Worthy out of Texas makes a lot of sense. A pure field stretcher, one of the fastest guys, the fastest 40 we've ever seen. That's something that this offense has been missing. You haven't been able to replicate it with the Marquez Valdez-Scantling types, the Mecole Hardmans. They need a true talented receiver there, and I think Xavier Worthy could be that pick. I personally like A.D. Mitchell more from Texas. I think he's more of a well-rounded receiver, more of a true alpha. But I think for Kansas City specifically, a team where they've been lacking a field stretcher since basically Tyreek Hill's been gone, I think Xavier Worthy out of Texas makes a ton of sense there. You add a whole nother dimension wrinkle to this offense to where, hey, now you can't just kind of come down on the run game and Travis Kelce and Rashee Rice, because you have to worry about the 4-2 guy. You're just burning your safeties deep for an 80-yard touchdown bomb in Xavier Worthy. And all right, that is my round 1 mock draft skill weapon positions. Now, a lot of guys are potential first round picks. Like I mentioned, we have A.D. Mitchell, I think is really great. Xavier Legette, just some guys off the top right there that I think really have potential to be first round picks if teams want to trade up, or, if we get the Jets maybe want to take a receiver, or the Pittsburgh Steelers, or, who knows, maybe even another team like, Baltimore wants to take a receiver. A lot of teams are in play, and it's a really deep receiver class. So I feel pretty good about this mock draft. I think the trades I made were pretty realistic. I didn't want to go too crazy with them because they're really unpredictable. But I think for fantasy football, as we talk about a lot on the channel, a lot of big moves are going to be made in the first round this year. So really pay attention, hone in. Like I said, we got 14 days until the draft. So stay tuned. Stick around the channel. I'll have fantasy football rankings coming out right after the NFL draft. I wanted to wait. I just wanted to see where everyone gets drafted first before I come out with rankings. And stay tuned for my thoughts on the NFL draft. I'll probably have a quarterback and receiver breakdown to what team they went to and how it kind of impacts the NFL and fantasy football alike. So if you like the video, leave a like down below. Stay tuned for more, and I'll see you guys in a little bit. Enjoy the NFL draft if I don't talk to you till then. And if I see you before that, see you then.